All right, it's kind of late, and I'm finishing up work a little bit ago, so I figured I'd get this video out of the way because I don't really have the energy, but I don't really want to do it tomorrow. I have another video. I have some videos about what I'm thinking about. Right, so that I also want to do tomorrow. Tomorrow is my birthday, so what I'm doing for my birthday? Oh, working. All right, so this little piece of work by you, Quintica. So don't know that this could go much further, probably. Um, don't have much time. I'm going to be playing it at double speed. And yeah, let's. Uh, by the way, this is not a live watching. I have watched this once before. Um, made a bunch of written comments to it. Backpedaling. Anything you don't say about your position in your first sentence is backpedaling. And when you backpedal, well, that's not conceding points. That's a terrible thing. You should admit you've lost the argument. Okay? Whether you think so or not. Let's go.
It's been a little while since I made a video, so I'm still playing with settings and stuff like that. And I have been watching a lot of videos, though. And even though the conversation between me and Pyrrho 314 is pretty much dead at this point, until we get another topic, right?
So is that your way of saying you're not assuming that just because you talk about my position and call me names in this video that it's not a conversation because I hadn't replied to you yet on this topic, but then you talk about how I had talked to you about this topic, so God only knows what you mean.
I did watch some of his streams, and I watched the back and forth between him and Mendham. That would be Gary, the anti-natalist, the crazy lion of Mendham, right?
I
And they
like that. I like that. The lion in Mentem. Gary would probably like that.
were going back and forth about economics and elections and the whole Trump-Hillary thing. Pyrrho visited this discussion of open borders, which Pyrrho had said previously that he was all for not having borders, any borders at all.
No, I didn't say I didn't want to have any borders at all. You projected that in. I have, I forget when I first had the idea of that borders should be like membranes. It's obviously an opportune moment to check certain things, like if you're bringing fruit with pests in it into California, you have to stop at the border of California and they check you, even though you have a right, even though the border between California and Nevada is considered open, even so, they'll stop and check for fruit and stuff like that. And people and tourists don't even know that, hey, you could be bringing the medfly in here or something. So they're extra careful, so they check. And you will just, you make this claim that I want no borders. But even if I had used those words, this is a position I've talked about for years. And what would it matter if I changed my position? What if I wanted no borders at all? And then after talking to Gary for 5 sentences or whatever, and now I'm like, well, you can check for disease and stuff. Wouldn't that just be me acknowledging a point? It's not like I'm saying I agree with you now that no immigrants should be allowed to come in at all. So I don't really get your point that you're going to go on and keep making, and you always make about your whiny little, why don't you admit I'm winning the argument? Because I don't think you're winning the argument. The reason I'm talking to you and people like this and Gary, and when you guys are so incapable of just discussing the actual argument, it's got to be 75% of this kind of bullshit where you're going to call me having half a brain and stuff. And I guess I should just let the video play and let that happen. But I talked to you because of the topic is something I want to talk about. And by replying to you, that's better than just replying to a figment of my imagination in theory.
This would be kind of like the idea of people being global citizens, where you had a residence that you would live at, and that residence would be in an area that was governed by a local enforcement of some type, a local governing system of some type. Yet trade would be open, and people coming and going from wherever would be open. And most people with half a brain can see why this would be a problem, why this would be.
Okay, so first of all, that part is more or less correct. Yeah, world citizenship, right. Just like you can go from Utah to California, but you might have to stop and let someone check if you have fruit. Now, Anyone with a half a brain can see why this is wrong. I assume you mean because with more than half a brain, uh, it takes longer.
Something that could not work. And one person with half a brain that figured this out was Mendem. I have agreed with Mendem on this point, where we usually disagree on many points. I've made the same argument.
So what I'm waiting for now is for you to say things that have to do with the brain about, not just that you don't like it or you that want this to happen. Here's what I want to have happen, but that you would actually mention why a person with a half a brain could understand that this would be undesirable, especially in the United States where this is our business plan.
Against Pyrrho, that Amendment has made against Pyrrho, that we should actually tighten our borders, that we should have a immigration policy that's either, in what I'm saying, that we should have no immigration at all until we get our employment together, drop the unemployment levels and put more of an effort into employing our own people. In Mendham, which I think has a very similar view, I don't know if he draws as hard a line on it as I do, but we did discuss this idea about borders, right? That there should be borders and that the borders should be tightened and that we should not be taking Syrian refugees or any other refugees.
So I'm saying we should loosen the borders to 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 a huge degree, right? And you think we should tighten the borders. Okay, so far, which half of the brain is going to say an actual reason?
And that we should not be allowing migrant workers, these people from Mexico or wherever, into our country, period. We should not allow them in here to take jobs or to steal votes. Okay, now Pyrrho is diametrically opposite on this opinion that myself and Mendham share. He has backpedaled. And in addressing...
So I backpedal because according to you, it's just like you said the same thing about feminism. It's like, well, you said this. No, you misunderstood and you project. And then I clarify what I mean by feminism, and you go, oh, now you're backpedaling. No, I'm clarifying to you. You have a condition where you think that because I disagree with you, I must know you're actually right. Could it occur to you that, you're right, you think, and I think I'm right, and you think I'm wrong about that, and I'm not sitting over here thinking that you're right and secretly agreeing with you but not changing my positions because why?
In Mendham, he has said in the recent video that he's talking about permeable borders, like a permeable cell, like a membrane. And that
Yeah, which is something I've been saying for years when this subject comes up. And I think that is a kind of open border.
we would scan for diseases. If someone wants to come into our country, if someone wants to go from one nation to another nation, we would have a checkpoint that would scan for diseases. We would have people that scan for, say, drugs or whatever. People that ran checks to see if they're criminals. And then if they had passed all of these
See, I appreciate that you got all these details correct.
criteria, and if they didn't have these, then we would let them into our country. Now, this is clearly bad.
Well, we'd let them into the country no matter what. I mean, if it's fruit with bugs in it, then you might say you have to go back or seize the fruit. If it's tuberculosis, then you say, holy shit, come over here to the clinic. We have a cure for that, right? If it's a warrant, then they go to jail. And it applies in both directions, really because it's just an opportune place to check. If you want to do other checks otherwise for global health, then you could do it otherwise. I mean, the purpose of the border is only to keep track of things like if you have a place like California that is really the country's breadbasket and it can't afford to have pests that maybe they're not worried about in Utah.
Backpedaling. This was a dishonest argument because when Pyrrho said,
So why would it, if even if it was backpedaling, why is that a dishonest argument? That does not follow. If it was backpedaling, then it's me adjusting my idea because of your guys' comments, which would be a good and honest reaction to you making a good point. But in fact, I've had this idea for a long time. This is what I meant by open borders. And in none of these cases is it dishonest for me to have this position, right? Even if I did have a position of open borders and then I switched to membrane borders, that's not dishonest, right? The it's not dishonest for your position to be able to change. And in this case, it didn't change in this conversation with Gary. It changed years ago, right? And what was it years ago? I was trying to remember. Did I ever believe in like no borders? And I suppose at some point, I hadn't thought about, well, you know, is it okay for California to check fruit? Because that's sort of the metaphor of, well, like, that's reasonable. I don't really feel too hassled that on the way back from Reno, they want to make sure I don't accidentally bring any Nevada fruit in there. That whether it's really necessary or not, I don't know, but an argument and hopefully scientific evidence um, justifies that caution. You could certainly imagine cautions like that if you have a virus or Ebola. You want to check, and one of the places you check would naturally be called a border. It doesn't even have to be where the current borders are. And by the way, did you think I was gonna? We had to mow down uh, mountains so that the whole border between China and uh, Tibet is open. No, it doesn't mean an absolute thing. If or because here's what would be more honest of you. Do you think that my version of a border counts as a closed border like you want to have where we prohibit immigration till we get our act together? How we got our act together, by the way, in the first place was by accepting immigration. Okay? And that's an American principle I still believe in.
That he wanted open borders or no borders at all. There was no mention of a permeable membrane. There was no mention of having all these checks for disease.
So it's dishonest if I didn't mention it as a permeable membrane. No, because when I say open border and then you ask me and then I tell you, the fact that there is more information coming as the conversation goes on, or even as it repeats itself and we come back around to certain details, that's not a dishonest thing. What you think is of as dishonesty is just someone that actually does honestly disagree with your position.
Disease, checks for criminal records, all this other stuff. In fact, Pyrrho had said that he was against profiling and against checking out people because of the country they come from or because of the religion.
Right, and you check people in both directions because it's a border, not because of where they come from. It wouldn't matter, right? You don't even need a work visa. You are where you're at. Maybe you're on an extended trip. Maybe you're on a vacation. Maybe you're not from a country per se anymore. You could be nomadic, traveling the world. Oh no, nomads are criminals. They'll rape my daughter.
Religion they might have. So no, Pyrrho, that's a fail. You failed to concede the argument, yet you gave the point. You made the point that Mendham was making. That
Concede the argument. I don't remember you arguing for a membrane border. Okay, if you or in Mendham comes out and reminds me or even makes right now an argument for a membrane border, then I'll concede I agree with your argument. But since you haven't given that yet, uh, in what sense would I have conceded to you a position you don't have? I concede your position of membrane borders that you don't possess is something I now agree with. You should really kind of drop the obsession with whatever this is about when you argue with people. Your goal is to get them to admit that you out-argued them, because that doesn't really ever happen. It leads to a lot of frustration and you acting like an ass. Okay, I was really surprised when you start off with the half for brain stuff. I didn't know you were all butthurt about, um, the feminism argument. And why would you be? You won it, remember, according to your reality view. So what would be the problem? Me, there is no winning. We're getting positions out in the open. The audience can watch, learn, agree, disagree. It's not about getting to one conclusion with each other. If possible, sure, that's fun. Let's try. I do that a lot with you. I've tried to do that. Where's the overlap? No, you won't admit any, just like Gary. I know there is overlaps. with Gary. With you, I was led to believe there was some overlaps, but now I don't really know where you stand.
that I was making. If you were honest about debates, if you were honest about these conversations, you would say that you were wrong. You would say that publicly, and you would concede that point to amend them, and you would concede
That I was wrong about believing in totally open borders. Huh. As we discussed this, I explained my view on what I meant by open borders, and I still have that view. And what I believe, compared to your position on the borders, absolutely seems pretty damn open. And me admitting that it's open, that it's basically libertine, anybody can come and go. And then you say, well, what about rapists that are raping a child as they cross the border? Can they come and go? Um, and you want me to concede, I concede that there is a use for having these light borders. And if you agree with me that these light borders have a use, then great. I guess you concede as well that membrane style borders, um, where people can come in regardless of their nationality, right? So it's open to any nationality. Um, if that's what you're arguing, I concede. I agree with you, but I'm still not going to say it was because of what you said, because I thought you were saying the opposite that whole time.
that point to me. You haven't done this, so this goes back to what I was saying about you being dishonest about your debates. The hypothetical that he wanted oranges, Mexican oranges, that we would enjoy these Mexican oranges once the person coming through from Mexico were cleared by our border security, which he at first said we should not have. So now this is to say that he believes.
So this is another thing, border security. I don't think an agriculture inspection really counts as security, but you could call it security. It's agriculture security. So I concede that if I had said there was no border security at all, then yes, there's fruit and vegetable medicine. Uh, there's could check someone's license plate to see if there's an all points bulletin. Um, Basically, the list of things that society's out there on the highway being able to check from time to time too. You could do that at a border so you can understand who's coming in, so that if there's Zika virus out there, not just from certain countries, but based on the science, you could, from certain areas, from all of the areas is my point, you would watch for that disease because there's a heightened awareness about it. So, um, does it help if I concede that I do believe in that sort of border security? Because I think I said that I do. So you want me to concede that what? That I got the idea from you? That I got the idea about checking just for disease and warrants and pests? I got that idea from your idea that we shouldn't allow any immigration at all. Does that really make sense?
Believes that we should have an open economic system. And this is a problem that we have is there's no protectionist policies or very little protectionist policies to protect American workers. That's a big part of the issue. That's a big crux of it. If you get people from these other countries that have no skills or very little skills, they do not know the language of the nation, the English. They do not know, they do not have contacts to get a job. They do not know people to get a job. And let's say they have no interest to get a job.
Okay, so these are the first reasons that we ever half a brain that involve any part of a brain that aren't just I'm against it and you should admit that I'm a better and I've convinced you of all these things. Um, okay. Carrier is moving its furnace plant down to Mexico. That furnace plant is already profitable, and I believe that the average salary is above minimum wage. So, and it's profitable right here, right now. They're moving down to Mexico, where these people that you're talking about that supposedly can't work in this factory, right? These people who supposedly aren't smart enough to work in an American job, they're getting those jobs. Now, if we let them come up here, they might still get those jobs. Maybe they work for $1 less an hour. Maybe they'll work for minimum wage and some guy's getting $15 an hour. Now, how that's better for us is that if they're still here, at least that business and that money is going from that business to the rent and to the restaurants and all the stuff in that community, right? So there's more of a chance that the people that no longer work at the factory might at least get some benefit from that. That factory is still paying for the schools in their neighborhood. From that money, maybe they can start a restaurant. Right now, no. 1,100 people are gone. I mean, or lost their jobs. The 1,100 jobs are gone. Those people that are there, they can't start restaurants. There's 1,000 people less in the lunch business. So we're better off if they're going to take our jobs anyway, Quintica. We're better off if they do it up here where we have some control. And as you're going to get to, for example, if we had minimum wage, which people are like, well, that's impossible. Well, do the fucking math. It's not impossible. The problem is that right now we're prioritizing people that already have money coming out of their orifices, ought to have more, and should never risk their money unless they're guaranteed to be able to take it back with some kind of tax bonus. Okay? So the money is in this country. The carrier plant was profitable. Now they're going to make more money. They're not going to make the furnaces cheaper. That would defeat the purpose. They're going to make more money, buy back stock, raise the stock price, and then everybody with all the stock options does well. And the jobs have gone down to Mexico, where they are benefiting Mexicans. And when this process runs out, they will sell the things to the Mexicans themselves, because they'll be the ones with jobs.
Right? They just have whoever they know from their criminal enterprises or whatever that are already in the States. And so they make a living undercutting actual citizens. And
Immigrants only know criminals. Okay. See, anybody with half a brain knows that most immigrants are not criminals.
And you could do that by selling drugs. You could do it illegally that way, or you could do that by stealing jobs, by having corporations or farmers or whatever hire you for a lower wage. Now, another point of hypocrisy is,
But you don't mind if the whole business entirely goes somewhere else, and you lose entirely your job, 100% of your wage, and they're still selling those furnaces back to the businesses in your fucking town. And you think that's you with the half a brain, that feels better for you and Gary, the everybody's lying people.
Pyrrho is one of these guys that believes in the minimum minimum pay rate, right? Minimum wage. Okay, and raising the minimum wage. Well,
Yeah.
if we're talking about raising the minimum wage, that's never going to happen as long as you allow illegals to come in and steal jobs. It's like this argument about the drug industry. If we had made drugs legal, like cocaine or heroin or marijuana across the board, you would see a drop in crime related to thefts or related to gang-related violence from people who push drugs, people who sell it, dealers who do it illegally. And similar arguments have been made for legalizing prostitution, that if it were legalized, if it were regulated by the state, you would have less crime related to prostitution, less periphery crime, I guess you'd say. So I don't know if I'm on board with totally legalizing prostitution across the board or totally legalizing any drugs, all drugs across the board. But when you're tackling these concepts, this concept of minimum wage, concept of allowing people into our country without checks and balances, then you have to weigh these other concepts together because they're all related. And this goes to where I say the conversation.
Yeah, they are related. We couldn't do it. It would be very bad to do without a minimum wage. But I support doing a minimum wage right here and now, raising the minimum wage and even pegging it to certain indicators right now, way before we would have an open border. And that's the way that you could only undercut the wages to a certain degree. Now, you would undercut the wages because in some jobs, you know, you might same as young people can undercut the wage. If a young person can be trained to be pretty good at something in 3 months, and they'll work for cheaper for longer with the raises adding up, or maybe they'll work no raise, then there's always that kind of labor competition. And if you have a living wage as the minimum wage, then there is a lot less chance of that than when they can put the job in Bangladesh and pay somebody $1 a day. Right? I'd rather have the Bangladeshis over here making $15 an hour. And when you go, but you're no money. Yes, we're the richest nation on earth. You're fucking crazy if you think there's no fucking money for it.
As a fail with Pyrrho on topics like this, because
I mean, it's proven. Look around the world. There's McDonald's all over where they have to pay $20 an hour. So, fucking yeah, they know how to make money. And even they don't even have to raise the price of a hamburger at Carl's Jr. because they're already pocketing enough money to pay for it. But if they want to raise the price, you're talking like 10 or 15 cents from the studies I've seen. Yeah, I think that's worth it in order for people that do shit for you to have a living wage instead of being spitting in your onion rings.
he is not taking the entirety of the situation under consideration. And it makes it harder to arrive at any solution when you have someone who constantly backpedals or who shifts the goalpost. If you're interested, you should check out their little back and forth that they've had going in last week, and see for yourself what you think. See if you agree with me or you disagree with me. If you disagree with me, I'm always happy to hear that too. And I would like to discuss these topics, but I don't want to do it with people who are dishonest about their own stance on the topics.
So okay, in what way am I dishonest? What's my real stance? I'm hearing from you. This is my new technique is just to say what I'm hearing from you is for this video for the next 5 minutes or whatever, that I'm dishonest. So that means what do I really think then? What's my real position? Are you saying I do want open borders and I'm lying to seem more palatable to you with the ones that are so much more restrictive, where I mentioned you could check for people's fruits or whatever? Or is my real position I want closed borders and I won't admit it because that's how we cucks, attract women? I don't understand what you think you're saying. And also, as far as the half a brain comment, what the hell did you... The only thing you said that added up was how they don't know the language and they're stupid and all they can do is their criminal associates that they hook up with over here, which sounded like something someone with a half a brain would say, because that's not what immigrants are like. And if you think so, well, I guess that's why we disagree. Not because you're lying and you know that immigrants are not mostly criminals like you've described, but, might as well say that. No, you're not being dishonest. You really believe that bullshit, right? And I really believe the truth that that's not a fair characterization of who packs up their whole family and goes somewhere else to work for a low wage. And there's some criminals, but guess what? There's some criminals already in here. And we have bigger problems. Crime's been dropping. The bigger problem is our manufacturing jobs and jobs in general. And we're about to lose 5 million jobs in trucking over some number of years. And it's not by restricting people that want to work from being around. It's by creating the growth and infrastructure work to employ them, right? And my model is it takes all kinds of people, right? It takes unskilled through skilled labor. For example, I'm a software engineer. So you have 3 software engineers. I can't do business. I can't do all the marketing and the accounting, all the things to try to use the output of 3 software engineers requires a lot more than 3 people can do. And so it's a whole spectrum of skills. And in fact, I've worked at many software companies and they always have some sort of warehouse work. They always have admin work. There is, of course, computer IT and stuff, but there's marketing and all HR people, right? There's sales, and there's manual labor and computer engineering, and there's technicians, things you can get training certificates just a couple weeks or a year, a couple years. And so by filling that out and not letting it get so lopsided, I think you can have the right mix of a labor market to construct complete businesses, right? Now, I could be wrong, but your half-brained attempt at saying I was wrong just proved that you're talking about something else entirely. Something else about how you want me to validate that you've won in some ways, but you're not clear exactly how. I struggling to try to concede that my membrane border idea is somehow was motivated as a concession to your xenophobic idea. They seem pretty different, and I really believe the idea I'm saying, so I know I'm being honest with what I think I think. If you know I think something else, then you should probably mention that in your video, what it is you think I really think, instead of just going, I don't like it, and it's stupid, and we can't let that happen, and minimum wage, and things are interrelated, so we can't do this because things are interrelated. I didn't find that particularly illuminating. Okay, before we stop, let's just see. Okay, so there's a couple people over there. Harry Hand mentioned Quintika's video about Pizzagate. Well, the guy that owns that pizza shop definitely has some sort of a problem, but it's obviously blown out of proportion. On the other hand, I won't be surprised if we find another criminal abuse ring. Child rape among politicians has proved to be, you know, very popular. And if there is a big ring, it'll have Republicans and Democrats in it. And yeah, I saw that video. But in a way, I mean, I agreed with his stance, which was like, well, it could be, I don't know, but it seems weird. Yeah, some of this, that guy's Instagram or whatever is pretty weird, but I'm a little cautious before believing. But I've read some stuff by people that believe it, not. I mean, I didn't watch it at first as a news story, but I'm really always interested in conspiracy theories. I like the weird and intricate logic that they have, and and you know, Jeffrey Epstein got caught. He was a big fancy billionaire that hung out with Trump and Clinton, and he was running a thing where he's having sex with 13-year-old girls. So hey, yep, it is live. But I gotta go to bed now. You should call me on the regular phone. I love you too. It's 2 o'clock. I was going to bed, but if you call, I'll stay up. All right. Thanks.